Halo Combat Evolved, the classic FPS shooter with the bright, almost cartoonish color palette and art style, with fun, sometimes cute little aliens to shoot, kill, and maim. Look at all that blood, all this violence and gore. Surely it's teaching the kids how to serve as instruments of war. Okay, that may have been a bit dramatic, but man did our moms not like us playing this video game, and others like it. After looking back at the comments on my Halo Dad video, it feels as though for every dad in 2001 who was introducing their kids to this incredible new game called Halo, there was a disapproving mom who needed to be convinced that while Halo was rated M for mature, it was moderately okay because you're not killing people with the realistic red blood, you're killing the aliens, so it's fine, mom, jeez. But after having such an engaging discussion on why our dads loved Halo, it made me want to dig into why our mothers seem to hate it. I mean, like, how are they even really aware of the game? It's not like my mom was actively playing these games or learning about what games we kids and my dad were playing. It kind of seemed like Halo should have just flown under the radar. It makes sense that Grand Theft Auto was outlawed in the house. That game practically screamed out loud that kids should be nowhere near it.
With Derek the Dodo.
Hey, kids!
Yeah!
Hi, Derek, I love you.
Aw, that's sweet. I love you too. What's your question?
When I find a gun at home, did you say to look down the barrel and pull the trigger?
Sure, honey. Give it a go.
But Halo, that felt a little different. It's not as immediately obvious as to why there were so many stories of kids hiding Halo from their mothers, or why there were so many mothers on alert for the game in particular. So let's talk about why. And I kind of believe this is where the story starts. The reasons this occurrence was so common was because of how popular Halo became so quickly. This game was everywhere. Television commercials, on the news, discussed on the radio. I mean, it was probably even on the cover of some of those trashy Walmart magazines they kept at the end of all the checkout aisles. One way or another, whether you're a gamer or not, you probably had some idea of what Halo was. At the very least, you knew it was a popular video game. And nothing that gets that much publicity doesn't come without some kind of controversy. Although from the surface, the game looked to have a colorful, kid-friendly color palette, with enemies donning the bright blue and orange colors, compared to the little guys having funny, high-pitched dialogue that also kinda sounded like it was made for children.
Nice shot.
The game was in fact rated M, with all the shooting, some strong language, the naked hologram lady, and blood that spewed from the aliens and humans alike. I remember freaking out at all the blood that would cover the environment anytime I was struck by a plasma pistol overcharge, always scared that my mom would see it and then make me turn the game off. And this very specific combo of Halo being a heavily publicized game, but containing elements that seemed like they'd help attract children, and being such an impressive step in gaming at the time, dads knew that this was an evolution in technology, and they couldn't help but play it in front of and sometimes with their kids. This meant that moms everywhere were going to at least question what was up with this Halo game and if it were appropriate for their kids to be playing it. So this is where we need to try and understand these moms who found themselves married to Halo dads. Because as irritating as it could be, having to fight to play these amazing games, or at some points having them taken away by a mom who we felt just didn't get it, we have to remember that she was just trying to look out for us. Trying to ensure that we didn't grow up prone to violent behaviors or lose our sense of empathy through the killing that was taking place in these games. Because to them, those are what the stakes were. Whether it be the news or suggestions from researchers or psychologists, the public discussions on how video games affect the development of children is an argument that's still taking place to this day. The particular strength of this sentiment in 2001, when this technology was still new and feeling more and more real by the year, had concerned parents often deciding to just play it safe and ensure that kids stay away from the M-rated games altogether. I mean, that's what the rating system was made for. With the arguments against video games carrying scary results like the possibility of kids growing up more likely to be violent and being desensitized to the literal act of murder, why even take that chance as a parent? Especially when the counter argument of letting kids play these games is, well, that they're fun, or that the blood isn't the realistic enough color. Yeah, good luck with that, Dad. But these are just my theories looking at the situation from my perspective playing these games and having a mother who preferred that I didn't. I think it would be beneficial to just ask her what was going on with Halo back in the day. So I did. Okay, so my mom didn't want to be on camera I was thinking about going all out and filming a little interview, but I felt like that could have been kind of awkward. But I did talk to her about her thoughts on Halo and violent video games in general, so let's talk about what she said. I didn't go through specific questions, but we just had a general chat about my brothers and I playing video games as we grew up, and I tried to get a sense of like what her thoughts were on the whole thing and how to kind of explain it back in the video. But the main takeaway I got from our conversation was that it really was all about protection. She was seriously concerned that my brothers and I would become desensitized to violence through video games. She wanted to protect us from this by ensuring that we didn't play games above a certain rating, because the rating system was there for a reason. Though she did kind of accept, and like we jokingly talked a little bit, as we know I have a low tolerance to seeing my own blood, so we were kind of questioning like, is that something that actually happens? It was funny to see that come from her rather than me, as far as a little jab towards the playing violent video games. She said that in this regard, though, she felt like she was always fighting a losing battle between my dad and us kids. She was kind of outnumbered in the house in this argument, and I had never really considered that feeling of being the only one in the household that is against something that's happening. Her having to have that bad guy parent mentality was probably hard. I don't think she was super appreciative of the fact that my dad wasn't working with her as United Front, as he'd be like sneaking and letting us play the games even during times where they were like banned. Though our specific situation also played a factor, she was aware of the fact that playing these games with my dad was something that we bonded over. And to a certain extent, she was willing to risk us playing these mature games if that's what it meant to make those memories with our dad. And I am definitely thankful of that, because they were very important. One of the things that did kind of surprise me was when I asked her, so now that you have 3 grown boys, none of which grew up to be particularly violent, has your opinion on kids playing these games changed at all, since we did play plenty of them growing up? And she said no, not really. She still holds negative opinions on exposure to really any kind of violent material, and she kind of turned this to me and asked if I'd be playing Halo with my kids as young as 4 or 5 years old like I was. And then I kind of assured my opinions on the matter and how I view it, especially now as a new parent. I find the perception of too much violence to be subjective. For instance, when talking to my mom, I used the example of taking a preteen hunting, which can be common in large parts of America. Now, I've never been hunting, but my best friend growing up, when we were like 10, talked about how his grandpa took him bow hunting for his first deer, and explained the process of dressing the deer after shooting it with the bow and tracking it down. And it sounded horrifying to me. I knew then that I never wanted to go deer hunting. Cutting it open like that, that's a no for me. But it had me thinking, how can a virtual video game be dangerous due to the way it can desensitize children to extreme violence, but shooting and gutting a deer doesn't? Not that I'm against hunting. Like, I understand it's largely acceptable to take kids hunting and to introduce them young, and I have nothing against that, by the way, but to me there's a little bit of hypocrisy surrounding the things we culturally perceive as violent and then the things we don't. But with all that being said, I told my mom that, yeah, I would play the first Halo game with my young kids. But to me, it really can be a case-by-case or game-by-game judgment. Halo Combat Evolved, yeah, I don't see a huge issue with a game like that, especially, with 20 plus years of hindsight with it being out. Now take a game like Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I played it 5 years old, maybe not. Though even then, I played Vice City because of the open world driving that wasn't common in gaming back then. I was only allowed to drive around when I played. That's all I wanted to do. I would get the game taken away if I was doing anything violent or playing the missions in any capacity. But regardless, it was a pretty inappropriate game to be playing that young. But now in my instance of parenting a young gamer, in the modern day, there are plenty of kids games that fill this role. Forza Horizon or maybe even a Lego City game are 2 easy ones that come right to mind. These things didn't exist back then, so we just played a sanitized version of Grand Theft Auto. But to make these decisions, you kind of need to have an understanding of video games and the type of experiences they provide in order to keep your kids away from the things that you wouldn't want them to see. And really, I do think that's where this whole conversation about moms in general hating some of the games you grew up with comes from. There was just a simple lack of understanding that the game rating system was always a bit suggestive. Like, I think if the ERSB were to rate Halo Combat Evolved in 2024, I could easily see it walking away with a T for teen rating. I know all of the blood splatters are comically large, and maybe a few choice swear words could be removed, but it's definitely not a Grand Theft Auto or something worse. Taking a deeper look at the game your kids are playing is always the most important step in deciding if they should play it or not. And sometimes, like in my family's instance, for the benefit of a social experience, compromises on what you may find to be too violent for your kid may need to be made in order to help them bond with friends or bond with another parent or whatever your situation may require. Because I really would have missed out on something special if I never got to play Halo CE with my dad due to its violence. But I perfectly understand the reasons why I never even got to drive around in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Man, I really need to play San Andreas one of these days. Never got around to that one. And even when faced with the unfortunate label of the bad guy or the unfun parent, our moms were vocal about violent video games, all because they were trying to protect us from something. Sure, at times it was due to a lack of understanding of video games, especially on a game-to-game level. This is kind of where the team and combination of two parents should work its best. As I mentioned in my previous video about how our dads let us play these games because they knew they were special, at least in my situation, my dad should have been more of a bridge to help my mom understand more in depth what we were really playing and using that understanding to work together in dictating what games we were allowed and what games should be banned. And it's funny, as I wrote this script out, I couldn't help but hear comments I had about how maybe this is too deep or too in depth to discuss children playing video games that are clearly labeled as for adults only. But memories playing games, both E for Everyone and M for Mature, made up many good memories of my early childhood. And I saw a good number of comments about how other dad-kid duos would hide their playing of M-rated games from their mothers, and it made me want to talk about maybe why that was happening. I hope my ramblings here provided some value. If you haven't seen it already, on screen now is my video on why our dads loved Halo and fought so hard to let us play it with them. Thanks for watching.